there's all these emo kids that, you know, find the superhero community and everything like that. And one of them was on there one day trying to say, oh, well, Adam West Batman is no good because Batman was originally a dark gothic fairy tale. And I said, well, you better, you know, find a copy of the original Batman from the 30s to take a look at, because it was nothing of the sort. It was a Mickey Spillane novel, basically. The only difference is the guy wore a hood. Like, you know, he said, I got 3 slugs in me and 2 of them are gin. You know, and I drove loudly through the town, and he comes up and he goes, where's the broad? I ain't telling you. Pow! And then, you know, I swung through the window and broke his neck. You know, and this kind of thing. And the kid actually went and looked, but that's what Batman originally was a Mickey Spillane novel. I want to make Shrunken Heads, and it's all because of Vincent Price. Vincent Price's Shrunken Heads. Remember that? And Jack Palance grabbing McCoy and says, find your pain. Release it! The Supermobile's biggest influences are the Futura Batmobile, Mad Max's Falcon XB GT, that's why I've got the Air Ram on it, and Jack Palance. Because Jack Palance had a car collection. I remember him saying, this is Jack Palance's, you know, and he had I think it was a classic Jaguar in the show, but he turned and he says, to some people, a car is a way to be somebody. Like that, and I always remembered that stuck in my head that Jack Palance said that. Karloff isn't fit to eat my shit, and he had no problem with Karloff. That so many things happen when you're not in your gimmick. Like the other day, I was taking the Corvette to get a cup of coffee, and I saw this old guy sitting at the side of the road, and he's sitting there beating his shoes out. I mean, he's not sitting, he's like lounged back like this, beating his shoes out. And so I turned the vet around and came back and said, can I get you anything? And he says, take me to the soup kitchen. And I said, okay, get in. So we're going to the soup kitchen, which is behind this bar, go figure. And I get around the corner with him to the soup kitchen, and all of his friends are coming to and from the soup kitchen. So he reaches over and cranks my radio, and he's yelling, hey man, look at me, out the window of the car. And I drop him off at the soup kitchen. And he gets out and he waves back to me, still holding his shoes in his hand and everything. So he was the homeless guy that arrived at the soup kitchen in a Corvette. He was the talk of the soup kitchen. But a lot of stuff happens when you're not in your gimmick. His big line was, and his hand would get away from him and was crawling away, and he grew a new hand. And really? Yeah. I'm shocked. You don't need to see Valkyrie. Because Valkyrie, as good of a movie as it is, Jack Palance told the story, and he would put the emphasis on everything, those huge guns of his, and everything.
I saw Hawk the Slayer, and he was the bad
like he said, Stauffenberg didn't have any fingers on his hand. He'd lost them in Africa. So he took the briefcase with the acid, and clutching it with both hands, he managed to crush the cylinder. But someone pushed the briefcase. I always get into the debate of who's the best Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Glenn Strange played the monster more than anybody else, and he played him so many times that when Karloff died, the picture with the obituary was Glenn Strange. And Glenn Strange says the first time he ever played the monster, he says, well, the monster was laying in the mud in the bottom of a castle when they found him. And so I was in this horrible fake mud all day, and I was freezing to death while they got ready to shoot the shot and everything. And I think he said Lon Chaney Jr., go figure, says, well, here's what'll warm you up. They kept bringing him rum all day long, so he's putting this rum back. And finally they said, all right, we're ready for the monster. And everyone thinks it's Glenn Strange's genius. So he gets up out of the mud, and he takes him, he's back like this, back and forth. Oh, he was bombed out of his mind, and he's wearing the Karloff lifts and everything. So he's like, oh my God. But people, oh, it's so brilliant. Like the monster doesn't have any power, and he's just, no, he was shit-faced tanked. He's making a movie about a man who goes around and shoots muggers. And Charles Bronson says, that sounds like a wonderful idea. And he says, oh, you mean you'd like to be in my movie? No, I'd like to go out and shoot some muggers. Would you care to join me? And he says, no, it's okay, let him come on over here. And he's signing the art. And he says, you look like a good kid, why are you doing this? And everything. And he's signing autographs for him. Well, Jack Palance he'd let him sign, but he'd like the same autograph hound told me I can walk with you, Mr. Palance, because he caught him in an airport, and he goes, I don't need you to walk with me. And smiles at him and shit, and you're like, Jesus Christ, because this guy's arms are as big around as your head.
Palance is really?
Oh, yeah, he did this movie once where he played this Roman something or other with the big armor, and he buries his friends in a Viking funeral, which why he's doing that as a Roman, you have no idea, but he takes the guy and puts him in the fire, and he turns around like, ah, and he's huge. Really? Well, don't forget, he held the one-arm push-up record in the Guinness Book. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's in the Guinness Book. Look him up.
Interesting.
Glenn, you have to, in Monster Zero, and he's like, this whole world isn't worth a hill of beans without love, baby, and shit like that.